My best friend knocked on my door 3 weeks after we buried him. It was about 1 in the morning. I was sitting on the couch with the TV on low, not really watching it. My dog, Penny, had her chin on my knee. I still had a plate with 2 cold slices of pizza. My phone was face down because if I saw his name again, I knew I'd spiral. Then the knock came. Slow at first. 1, then 2. Like he always did, a little rhythm we made up freshman year. I froze. Penny lifted her head and growled, the kind where she barely opens her mouth, but the sound is there. I stood up. My knees felt bad, like when you lock your legs too long. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. It was dark, porch light dead again. I could make out a shape, shoulders hunched, hood up. Another knock. I opened. He was there. Evan. Same tired eyes. Same stupid thin mustache he'd been proud of. I swear for a second my heart just stopped, and then it slammed so hard it hurt. I said his name without thinking. It slipped out of me like breath. Evan. He smiled like he was trying it out. Hey, man. I didn't think. I grabbed him. He was solid. He hugged me back. He was colder than he should have been. Not, it's October and I walked here cold. Cold from inside. His hoodie smelled wrong. It smelled like old water, like a bucket that sat around all summer. Not strong at first. Just there. I let him in and closed the door. Penny backed up. She hid behind my legs and then she just left. She ran down the hall and into my bedroom. I heard her nails scratch on the hardwood. Evan looked at the couch like he'd never seen it before. He smiled wider. I got lost, he said, and he laughed, like that explained everything. He pulled his hood off. His hair was wet. It was sticking to his forehead. He kept one hand in the pouch of his hoodie like he was keeping something. I said, "Where? Where have you been?" It came out sounding angry. I didn't mean it that way. It was just so much at once. He blinked slow. "Here," he said. He looked around my place like it was new. I mean, around. I came as soon as I could. I was trying to process everything. My brain felt like it lagged behind my mouth. We had put him in the ground. Closed casket. His mom had cried until she couldn't breathe. At the river, there had been crews and tape and a sheriff's boat that cut the water up and down for 2 days. They didn't find him. We all said maybe. Maybe he got caught somewhere. Maybe he washed into the lake. The funeral was church and photo boards and a pile of flowers and people I hadn't seen since high school. Everyone kept touching me because they knew we were close. And then after that, the weird stuff. Right after the funeral, the texts started. Just little things at first. You up at 1:17 a.m., which he'd sent me for years when he couldn't sleep. I stared at it until sunrise. I didn't reply. 2 nights later, a call at 3:09 a.m. from his number. No voicemail. Then a text that was a photo of the river from the bridge near the mill. The timestamp said it was taken months ago, but I had never seen that photo before. My name popped up in the chat, like he had me saved. The typing bubbles would come and go. I'd get "hey," and then the chat would clear, nothing sent. It made me sick. I blocked the number and then unblocked it because blocking felt wrong. I started keeping my phone face down. I told myself someone spoofed his number. Someone thought it was funny. I knew it wasn't. I told nobody because I didn't want to hear tone in their voices. Now he was on my couch, making a dent in the cushion like always. He leaned back like he owned the spot. He rubbed his hands together. They were damp. He left little wet marks on his jeans. The smell was stronger, the kind of stale you get from a bait bucket or an old towel. He glanced toward the hallway and then away. Penny still bark at the mailman?" he said. He said it like a question he'd practiced. I didn't know what to say. She was curled under my bed, I could tell. She did that during storms. "Yeah," I said. She still hates him. He nodded like he was relieved. "Good girl," he said. He spoke toward the hallway but didn't try to call her. He never tried to call her that whole night. That used to be the first thing he did when he came in. He'd do the dumb baby voice and she'd howl. I went to the fridge. "You want a beer?" I said. "Or water?" As soon as I said water, I felt stupid. "Yeah," he said. "Beer." He sat up a little. He watched me like I'd forget he was there if he looked away. I grabbed 2 bottles, popped the caps on the counter edge. He took his and held it with both hands. He didn't drink. He just held it like it made his palms hurt. After a minute, he set it down. He still hadn't taken off his hoodie. "So," I said. I stood just out of his reach. I tried to take him in without being obvious. His eyebrow scar was wrong. He got it when he was 8, lining up his bike with mine and eating dirt on a gravel hill. He had worn that scar like a badge. It sat above his left eye. Now it was above his right. Clean, a pale line. I stared too long because he noticed and touched his forehead. "Pain." "Panged it," he said. He did not sound sure. How did you get out?" I said. That came out small. I felt again like I was listening to someone else ask it. He looked down at his hands. He made a face like he was thinking hard, pushing through fog. "I climbed," he said finally. "It was dark. I was cold. I just kept going. I knocked. You weren't home right away that night. I waited. That's okay. That's okay. We were happy." He said the last part like he'd reached for a word and found a string and was reading off it. He smiled again. It didn't fit right on his face. "Do you remember," I said, and my voice shook, "when we got caught at the lake after curfew? Senior year? Your mom let you up. She said, "You're not a fish. You don't need to be in the water after dark," he said, right on top of me. He nodded fast. It looked rehearsed. He tapped his bottle with his finger. We were happy. My mouth went dry. He got the line, but the way he said it. It was like he pulled it from a list. He didn't laugh. When he told that story before, he always laughed so hard he cried. He'd slap the table. Nothing slapped now. "You smell like the river," I said. I didn't mean to say that either. It just slipped. He flinched a little, like I'd snapped a rubber band. "Yeah," he said. I walked. "I should shower." He looked toward the bathroom and then back at me, like he needed permission in a way he never did. I should just... "We could eat? You got any meatball?" He paused. I watched something in him wobble. "Pizza," he finished. "You hate meatballs," I said. I said it too quick. He blinked at me. "You always get pineapple," I said, because that was easier to make into a joke. I flipped it. "Only psycho I know who loves fruit on pizza." "Right," he said. Relief washed across his face like I'd fed him a line in a play. "Pineapple. Yeah, that's me." He smiled, too big again. He picked up the beer and took a sip. He swallowed like it hurt. We did this for an hour, maybe. He told me about the river like it was a dream he couldn't get a hold on. It was always cold when he described it. Always dark. I asked about the hospital. He said, "No hospital. I came here. I came to you." He would sit up and then slump. He said we were happy twice more, not connected to anything. He was always shifting from the porch light through the blinds. He stood up once and stepped into the strip of light and put his hand in it and pulled it away fast. "Bright," he said. He flexed his fingers like they'd cramp. At some point, he looked at the time and said, "I should go. I'll see you soon." He said it like a promise and a question. He went to the door and put his hood up. He didn't touch Penny even though she was peeking out from under the bed now. He didn't look at her. He hugged me quick. His hoodie dampened my shirt. The cold on his skin felt deeper than skin. "We were happy," he said in my ear. After he left, I went straight to the bathroom and threw up. I leaned on the sink and looked at myself. I looked like I hadn't slept in a month. I splashed water on my face, and it smelled like his hoodie. I gagged again. Penny refused to come in the bathroom. She stood in the hall with her ears flat. She stared at the door and then at me like I had brought something in, and she didn't understand why. I didn't sleep. At 4 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Evan's number. "Open up." I stared at the door until the sun came. He didn't knock again. When the light hit the porch, I went outside. There were damp footprints on the mat. Not muddy, just outlined wet. They faced inward. They faded as I watched. I tried to tell myself I was in shock. People see things when they're grieving. Brains do weird things. I went to work anyway because if I stayed home, I'd think myself into a hole. I lasted until lunch. My phone kept flashing his name. Missed call. Missed call. No voicemail. The one voicemail I did get was 11 seconds long. It had a sound like wind and then like someone stirring a big pot. Water against something hollow. I sat in my car and listened to it 5 times. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I drove home before my shift ended and lied to my boss about a fever. That night he came back. I told him to, like an idiot. I texted him, "You can come over after 9, and then stared at my own text like it was a note found at a crime scene. He showed up at 9:04. He smiled like he'd been out there counting minutes. He was wearing different clothes that were still damp. His laces were spotted with silt. He didn't have his hoodie. He had on the blue one I lost sophomore year at his place. The one with the ripped cuff that I chewed on during finals. It fit him weird, like the sleeves were an inch too long and he didn't notice. "Penny," he said, trying again. He crouched like he'd call her. She was in the back of the house. She didn't move. He crouched for too long. He was good at not blinking. I decided I needed to test something without calling it a test. I pulled the photo box from the top of my closet. We never made albums. We just threw pictures in there. Old sleepovers. Dirt-covered kids. Evan with a black eye and me with a split lip because of a dodgeball fight that got out of hand. We sat at the table and I spread them between us. He watched my hands like he was learning a dance. "Remember this?" I slid one with us at 8, at the creek. He's holding a frog. His eyebrow scar looks fresh. It's above the left. He squinted. "Yeah," he said slowly. He tapped the picture. His finger landed on the frog. "It peed on me." "It did," I said. Relief hit me hard. Then he looked up and said, "That was the day after your mom made grilled cheese with mayo instead of butter." He smiled like he nailed it. My mom never did that. That was his mom. He mixed them up like it didn't matter. I put another one in front of him. Prom. Junior year. He'd refused a tie. We had matching fake boutonnières because we thought it was funny. "Who took this?" I asked. "Mrs. Jensen," he said right away. He didn't even look. Mrs. Jensen had moved before junior year. She wasn't there. He was telling a story, but not ours. "Say the line," I said. I hated myself while I said it. We had one stupid line we said at each other's birthdays. It was nothing. It was dumb. We'd said it since we were 12. Until next basketball season, old man. Even though neither of us played after sophomore year. It made our friends roll their eyes. He loved that. Evan looked at me and waited. Until next. He narrowed his eyes like the word was behind me. "We were happy," he said, soft. I recorded him that night. I never told him. I set my phone on the table and hit record. I asked him to tell me about the day at the lake where we got the sunburn so bad we couldn't sleep. He started okay. He said, "We brought Doritos and that cheap root beer. You fell asleep on the cooler." Then he paused. He blinked. He started again with the exact same words. "We brought Doritos and that cheap root beer. You fell asleep on the cooler." The same cadence. The same little laugh. He ran it 3 times. By the 4th, he just sat there, mouth open like he forgot to finish. He rubbed his hands together. Water dripped from his cuffs onto the table. It ran toward him, not away. I listened to the recording later with headphones. The background had a sound. Not loud. More like a texture under his voice. A soft slosh, like when you stand over a storm drain after rain. When I scrubbed back and forth through the clip, the slosh didn't move with it. It sat under the whole thing like it belonged to the room. At the very end, where he stopped talking and breathed, something whispered. I ripped the headphones off and then forced them back on and turned it up and made myself sit still. It was my name, I think. Or maybe just, "Hey." It was like hearing someone upstairs when you know you're alone. I started doing stupid remedies. Not because I believed in them, but because when you are lost, you grab anything. My grandma used to pour salt at the back door when she had dreams about dead relatives. She'd say, "They get confused. You gotta give them a border." I poured a line of salt across my threshold before he came the 3rd night. I stood there like a child with a secret and waited. He walked up my stoop. He saw it. He paused. He tilted his head. He put his hand out like he was feeling heat. "What's this?" he said, like he already knew. "It's for ants," I said, because I panicked and lied. Then I said, "No, it's... I don't know. Just step over." He lifted his foot and stopped. He looked at me. He looked at my face longer than he should have. I felt seen in a way that didn't feel good. "If you say it's okay," he said. "If you say I can." "It's okay," I said. My throat hurt. "You can." He stepped over. The lines smudged and water pulled the salt into little puddled stars. He smiled like I'd handed him a key. "We were happy," he whispered. He didn't sound happy. The doctor was my next bad idea. I told him we should go get him checked. "You were in the cold. You could have. Anything." I expected a fight. He surprised me. He said yes. He said it too quickly. In the waiting room, he sat stiff. He kept staring at the fish tank like it was going to say his name. His hands stayed inside his sleeves. He didn't fill out the form. He wrote his name and then scribbled nothing. When the nurse called him, he looked at me like I was supposed to tell him what to do with his legs. I went in with him because he looked wrong in there, perched on the paper table, feet not quite reaching the step. The doctor was a tired man who smelled like coffee. He shook Evan's hand and then wiped his own on his coat without thinking. "Cold," he said, surprised. Evan smiled. The doctor put the pulse ox on Evan's finger. It beeped like it didn't know. The numbers looked low. His temperature was 91. The doctor frowned at the thermometer and tried again. "These things are junk," he said, but I saw the skin under his watch go goosebumped. He asked Evan questions like, "Any chest pain? Any numbness?" "You look chilled, pal." Evan answered some of them and didn't others. He said fine, a lot. He had to stop and ask me what our address was, even though he'd been to my place 100 times. "It's cold," he said when he couldn't find words. It was cold. It is cold. "Hospital would be smart," the doctor said finally. He tried to make it sound casual. He put a hand on Evan's shoulder and then took it off. "Just to warm you up. Check labs. You probably had a close call out there. You're lucky. Somebody was looking out." "Someone was looking," Evan said. He stared at me when he said it. I felt sick. My stomach crumpled like paper. My last text to him the night of the accident had been running late. 10 minutes. He had called twice. I didn't answer. I was sitting in my car with the heat blowing, scrolling nothing. Evan said, "I need the bathroom," and he slid off the table. He went down the hall. After a minute, the nurse knocked. Then the nurse went in like she'd never learned about boundaries. Then she backed out, face white. "He must have left," she said. There was water under the door. Not much. Enough to make your mind do math. He was waiting for me by my car. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say anything until we were moving. "No one there knows me," he said. He turned his face to the window and watched the dark. "We're happy," he said, very soft. It sounded like a reminder you say in an argument. The church was my mom's idea. I broke and told her part of it, not the worst parts. I said, "I think I'm seeing Evan." She went quiet and then she said, "I'll come over." She didn't. She told me instead to talk to Pastor Lee. She said, "This isn't weird. This is grief. Or it's weird and we have people for weird." I didn't believe in much, but I went. We sat in the back because Evan didn't want to go near the windows. It was mid-morning. The light off the stained glass painted the pews. He wouldn't sit where the light hit. He had his hood up even inside. Pastor Lee is small and soft-spoken. He shook Evan's hand like he meant it and didn't wipe his palm after. I loved him for that. "You look like you've been through it," he said. "We all loved you." We said goodbyes. "What do you need?" Evan opened his mouth and nothing came out. He blinked like the words were birds and he'd missed them. "I was cold," he said eventually. It got dark. I walked. He was late. Pastor Lee looked at me. He didn't judge. He put his hand on my shoulder and it felt like a weight I could carry. He spoke some words I don't remember. I was crying in the middle and didn't feel it start. He did a prayer that wasn't showy. He asked for mercy, for rest. He asked for release. Evan flinched at that word. He made a noise in his throat like a hiccup. The candle on the side table sputtered like a kid blowing across a bottle top. A draft ran past us that shouldn't have been there. The hair on my arms lifted. Pastor Lee kept going. He had a way of not acting surprised by anything. Afterward, in his office, he gave me a pamphlet about grief groups and a look that said he knew the pamphlet was nothing. He told me, sometimes they get lost in what's left behind. Sometimes we hold too tight. Sometimes both. He looked at Evan when he said it. Evan stared at a water stain on the ceiling until I wanted to scream. On the way to the car, Evan stopped. He breathed weird. Not quick, just wrong. "I can't go back there," he said. He meant the sanctuary. He meant the light. He held the handle of my car like it was the only solid thing. He started coming every night after that, just after dark. If I texted, he'd come faster. He avoided days. He told a good story once about our 8th grade teacher, Mr. Doyle, throwing our desk into the hall when we wouldn't stop talking. He laughed at the right parts. The next night, he told the exact same story with the exact same words. He wouldn't look at the picture of Mr. Doyle when I held it up. He called him Mr. Jones. His memory felt like a house where the lights were going out one by one. He kept getting stuck. He'd say, "We were," and then he'd look at me, waiting. I'd finish for him because I couldn't stand the panic in his eyes. "Happy," I'd say, and he'd repeat it and relax. He couldn't remember our handshakes. He couldn't remember the time we took apart my dad's radio just to see if we could put it back. He'd put his hands on my cheeks sometimes like we were making a pact and I had to look away because his fingers were wet and freezing. If I touched his wrist, he'd flinch and say, "Sorry," like he'd bumped into a stranger. The one thing he had perfect was the night he slipped into the river. I was on the bank, he said, always the same way. It was slick. It was dark. I called. "You were late." He never looked angry when he said that. He looked like he was telling me what the weather was. I drove him to the old field behind the school one night because I needed to see him under those lights we sat under as kids. The sun was almost gone. It was just enough to make long shadows. He stayed in the darker part, by the chain link. He dug his fingers into the fence with a little clink. He didn't complain about the cold like he used to. He used to complain about everything. He kept adjusting his hood like it made a difference. "We could get tacos," I said, like food could pin down a person. He nodded and then said, "Meatball pizza," and then blushed like he knew he'd done it again and didn't know why. By the 4th weekend, his borrowed memories were thin. He started to ask me questions that sounded like someone reading a script after the other actor didn't show. "What did we do sophomore year?" he'd say. "Where did we sit in cafeteria? Tell me about that time with the boat." He stole little things from my answers and put them in his mouth like candy. He'd say them later with my tone. He started standing in the hallway when he came, not stepping into the living room until I said the words, "Come in." I tried not to say them and we stood for 7 minutes. He swayed. He looked tired. A drip fell from the end of his sleeve. It hit the carpet and disappeared. "Please," he said finally. I said it, and he stepped in with a big breath like he'd been underwater too long. The last straw, the thing that made it all snap together, was the voicemail I got at 2:03 a.m. It was from his number. It was 4 minutes long. I set the phone on the table and listened with the volume up. It was the river. Not like it to my ear. It was the river at the mill. The churn against the old pylons has a hitch in it. It catches, and then rolls, and then catches. It was that. Under it was a voice so soft it was almost a shape. Mine. Me. My voice saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. I had said that into my pillow a lot. I didn't know it went somewhere. Later, after that, when he spoke, sometimes I could hear my sorry in it. Like he lined himself up with my grief and traced it. I couldn't keep doing it. I hadn't done laundry in a week because it all smelled like him. Everywhere I looked, I saw him and also didn't. Penny had moved to my mom's because she stopped coming out if he was anywhere near. The house felt like a stage set between visits. After he left, sometimes the floor by the door would be wet. I wiped it with my sock, like if I did it with paper towels, I'd have to admit it was real. I kept dreaming of the river. I'd wake with water in my mouth and my heart punching hard. When I sat up, my phone would be lit. "You up?" in bright white, like it was funny. We went back to the river because it felt like that was where I needed to answer something. He came without me asking. I think he knew. He always knew where I was. He showed up as I was putting on my jacket and he said, "I'll go with you," like I'd invited him. We drove with the heat on full. He sat with his hands under his thighs and watched the trees go by. He didn't fog the window when he breathed. The mill road was empty. I parked by the chain across the dirt and we walked the rest. It had rained that week. The ground gave under our shoes. The air down there smells the same year-round. Wet leaves and iron. The water made its usual noise. He stopped at the edge of the gravel and closed his eyes. His shoulders went up and down once, like he was bracing. "This is where," he said. He didn't point. He didn't have to. He stood there a long time. He opened his eyes and I saw how tired they were. Not tired like no sleep. Tired like a thing wearing the wrong shape. He looked at me like he was trying to match my face to something he had left. He put his hand out. I took it. It was very cold. I held it anyway. "I followed you," he said. He said it so plain I almost didn't get it. "I followed you out of the water. You pulled me. You kept pulling. You were loud. I heard you in your car. I heard you in your bed. I heard you at the store when they asked you paper or plastic. You made a space that fit me. It was warm in it. I like warm." He shivered and then smiled like he thought that was funny. "I want to stay. I tried. I'm not him. I thought I was. I'm not. I'm running out." He didn't have to say what he was running out of. It was in everything. It was the way he kept looking for lines to say. The way he hung his hands in the dark because the light hurt. I wanted to fight it. I wanted to drag him back to my car and turn the heat up and drive until we hit a border and see if it stopped at a state line. But the river was right there. It was right there the whole time. He said, "I don't know where to go unless you show me." He lifted his other hand like he wanted to touch my face and then put it down without trying. He didn't want to do a wrong thing. That ripped me in half. "I was late," I said. I said it because it had to be said. It came out like I was spitting a seed. "I'm sorry. I should have been here." He shook his head. Drops fell from his hood, even though it wasn't raining. It was dark. It was cold, he said. We were happy. He smiled and it looked right for the first time. Maybe because he wasn't trying to make it look right. "Okay," I said. I did the only thing that felt like an act of love left. I took off my jacket and put it around his shoulders even though it would get soaked. He closed his eyes. He made a sound like a laugh. I stepped with him onto the flat rock just beneath the lip. He breathed quick once, like fear. "Hey," I said. "I'm here." I didn't let go of his hand. He nodded. The water was up. It licked over my shoes, and then my ankles, and then my shins. It hurt. The kind of hurt that makes your breath leave you. He didn't make a sound. He walked like he was stepping into a bed he'd been eyeing all day. We stood waist deep and I tucked my fingers into his sleeve and held tight. The river tugged. It wanted him. It wanted me too, but I set my feet and leaned. He looked at me one more time, and whatever was in there that felt like him blinked through. Just for a second. It was the kid with the frog. It was the teenager who held my hair while I puked after the first time I drank. It was the man who fixed my brake light for free. "Thanks," he said. That was his voice. Not borrowed. Not looped. I lost it. I started crying hard enough to breathe wrong. He smiled like he forgave me for it. He let go. Or I did. I don't know. It was both. His sleeve slid through my fingers. The cold ripped at my elbows. He went under quick. Not drama. Not like the movies. Just a slide and then a roll and then the black took him and the bubbles went by and then it was just the river again. I stood there until my legs stopped listening to me. I got out because if I didn't, I knew I'd go the same way and it wouldn't fix anything. I crawled up the rocks on my knees. My hands were numb and red. I lay on my back with my jacket floating on the edge of the water, and I cried until I didn't have tears. The trees moved like they always do. The mill kept making its old noise. On the drive home, my phone didn't buzz. My hands shook on the wheel. I turned the heat up. It didn't do much. I got to my place and unlocked the door and stood there in my socks, dripping on the mat. The air smelled like dust and nothing. For the first time in weeks, the house smelled like itself. No wet towel smell. Just my place. Penny stepped out from the hallway, slow, nose working. She came to me and pressed her head hard into my shin. I sat on the floor and she climbed into my lap like she did when I brought her home. She wasn't scared. She was shaking a little because I was wet. I laughed. It came out like a cough. I slept that night. When I woke up, there were no missed calls, no texts. I opened my voice recorder and I listened to the clip from the kitchen. It was just our voices. The water was gone. The last "we were happy" sounded like somebody saying goodbye. I deleted it. I didn't keep anything that could make a hole for that thing to push through. I kept a picture of him with the frog on my fridge. I kept his mom updated with things she could hold, like the sweater she thought she lost but was in my trunk. A week later, I drove by the mill in the day. I stood on the bridge and leaned on the rail and listened. The catch and roll was the same. It didn't sound like anything else. I said, "Bye, man." I didn't say it loud. I didn't say it to the water. I said it to the space next to me on the rail. I meant it. I went home and fed Penny and answered my mom's texts and went to work and told the truth when my boss asked if I was okay. I am now. Some days less. I still walk to the door when I hear a knock late, but it's habit, not hope. I open it and the mat is dry. I lock it and turn off the porch light and go back to the couch. I breathe. I let the dark be just the dark. I let him rest. I let myself. That's it for tonight's tale. If it kept you up, maybe leave a like to keep me company. Subscribe for more strange stories, and maybe, just maybe, click the next one before the lights go out. See you in the next one.